Welcome to the Rome How podcast, where I share conversations with fascinating people who have equally fascinating career paths to inspire you to take the next big leap in your own life. My name is Jennifer Gardner, and I'm your host. On April 23, 2018, on perhaps my very worst hair day ever, I had perhaps one of my very best conversations ever with one of my very favorite people, Dr. Annise Mabry. We had this conversation on Facebook Live. That conversation is now this podcast. But before I get into the meat of my introduction to Doc Mabry, let me first say a few words about what's going on with me. If there were such an award, I would probably win it for being the best at breaking the golden rule of indie podcasters, which is the rule of consistency. I have been seriously inconsistent with releasing episodes. The irony is that I am hoarding conversations with a lot of inspiring people and choosing not to release them. Why? Because I'm busy. And I mean, not just busy, because I've always been busy, but consumed. And what I'm consumed with is the creation of a course that is designed to help people develop a bulletproof mindset and the communication strategies to help them market and grow their businesses. I'm now ready to release the course into the world and to find students for it wherever they may be. But let me just say that between that and my law practice, it's been 2 full-time jobs, but perhaps one of the most rewarding ones I've ever undertaken. So I'm now emerging from this creation-consumed frenzy to bring this episode to you. And I'm super excited to do so because Doc Mabry is really inspiring. As you know, some of us get to take our time in going through difficult transitions, and others of us get a kick in the pants and are forced to swim or die. Well, Doc Mabry falls in the latter category. She has gone through several hurricanes of change, not of her choice or making, and she always lands on her feet. She's faced down life-threatening illnesses and successfully transitioned from a 17-year position as Dean of the Graduate Studies program at Devry University after her employment was suddenly terminated without any cause or prior notice. But Doc picked herself up and moved on with her life, and she has created work that is a true expression of her passion and her purpose and a culmination of all of her work experience, where she is now able to bring her whole self to her work. Essentially, what she has done is started a nonprofit institution where she helps parents homeschool their children, and she mostly works with families who have children who have dropped out or aged out of high school or are otherwise at risk. She's done this for 83 families, and this is a huge accomplishment. So in our interview, we get really personal. Personally, I was really impressed and honored about how deep and vulnerable she was with me on the podcast. I mean, she shares really personal details about her life, such as how she was a shadow person and how she got tired of hiding her true self and what she did about that. Like all great stories, Doc Mabry's story is one about struggle and triumph with identity, finding joy and love. You need to hear her story directly from her, not from me. So here we go. Here's the interview. And keep in mind when you're listening that this was live streamed on Facebook, which is why it mattered that I had a bad hair day. And now this is the audio, which you're listening to for this podcast. Anyway, I hope you enjoy, and I'll see you on the other side. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Rome Howell Creative, the video live streaming podcast. And I'm here with Dr. Annise Mabry, who is a new friend of mine and quickly becoming one of my favorite people. Dr. Annise Mabry. I'm going to call you Annise, and I want to welcome you to the show.
Hello, my friend in California.
I want you to please introduce yourself because I'm sure you can do it better than I can.
Okay, well, hello, everyone. I am Dr. Annise Mabry, or Doc, as my radio listeners know me and my students. I am an educator by profession, a mom by choice, a homeschool educator by divine intervention, and a police officer or a recovering police officer by Georgia Post. So I've transitioned a lot in my life, as you can tell.
And that's why I have you here to talk all about transitions, because that's the hot topic of this show.
Yay!
Yay. Yes. I didn't know that you were a police officer at one point in time. That part of your history completely got by me. How did that happen?
Because we were so focused on being shocked that I got fired from Devry after 17 years.
Right. That's the primary reason why we decided to have this conversation, because when I heard your story, I was so inspired. I mean, basically what happened is you were at Devry, I think you said, for 17 years.
17 years. I started at Devry in 2000. And I worked my way up from adjunct professor to full professor to online faculty trainer to online faculty manager to becoming the first African American female dean of graduate studies in 2009. Now, don't ask me why in 2009 we're just now getting an African American female dean. Let's not even have that conversation.
In Georgia, right. Well, why did it take so long, do you think?
I think because a lot of times in those professions, especially academia, people of color, especially women, we are often the last promoted.
And the first to go.
Last promoted, first to go. Yeah.
Because that's what happened to you.
Yeah. And, but Jennifer, here's the thing. I could have been bitter, but I honestly think that everything that happened made me better.
I mean, I haven't known you very long, but that's what I really, really love about you is your incredible positive attitude and your energy and your outlook on things. And, I study and I've worked a lot with people who go through huge transitions, like all kinds of crises. And the ones that land on their feet with the most ease and the ones that are able to make it through the transition with the most ease. Because let's face it, transitions can be traumatic. They can be terrifying. They can redefine us. And I am so fascinated by people who go through the hurricane of change and land on their feet. And I mean, that's been sort of like a study of mine. I've helped people as a lawyer through these transitions because often a big crisis and a legal crisis is accompanied by some kind of a personal or a career or a business crisis, right?
Yes.
But people like you fascinate me. You were able to go from this 17-year plum position to having to totally reinvent yourself without any notice overnight.
Yeah. And I don't think it was so much as overnight as the universe had been preparing me along the way, because I ended up having to go out on medical leave 3 times, actually, in 2010, in 2011, and then in 2012. So it was like the universe kept speaking to me to tell me that it was time to let go, but I kept holding on. It's kind of like being in that relationship with someone where it's time to break up and you just keep holding on because you're in that uncomfortable place. Or it's like when you've had that milk in your refrigerator for so long and it's expired and the date says it's expired, but you're like, I can get a few more uses out of this because it doesn't smell sour yet. And, and the universe was really telling me it's time to let this go. You have served your purpose here. You're holding on beyond the expiration date, essentially.
Well, let me ask you something. And this is something we haven't talked about before. When you got those clues, did you ignore them or did you begin to prepare yourself for what the next step was going to look like?
I think part of me, for the most part, I ignored them. I don't even think I really started to prepare myself because in the back of my mind, I hadn't planned on leaving Devry. I was like that woman in the marriage that never planned on the husband or the wife coming home and saying, we're getting a divorce. I just always figured I would go back and I would eventually find my passion again. But the truth was, every day that I went in there, I died a little more. And it was like the universe was throwing me a life preserver. And, the universe was saying to me, you don't have to die. This does not have to be your life. But I kept holding on to it because it was the only life I knew, because I had to reinvent myself. I got cancer the first time in 93. And then I got an autoimmune disease. And then I got cancer again in 2006. And then in 2010, I got the autoimmune disease came back. So it was like I had to give up my career in law enforcement. And that was when I transitioned into becoming an educator. So I had started over before. And I think the reason I held on so tightly with Devry was because I wasn't ready to let go.
Interesting. And so the day came and you were suddenly let go. And what went through your head?
The way that they did it, I joke now about it, but at the time it wasn't funny. So on March the 1st, 2016, I went to bed. I was the Dean of Graduate Studies for Devry University. On March the 2nd, 2016, my daughter went to the doctor to get blood work drawn, and they told her that she didn't have insurance. So my daughter calls me and she's screaming and yelling and she's distraught because she's like, "Oh my God, Mommy, well, you took me off your insurance." And I'm like, "No, I didn't take you off my insurance." I was like, "Let's call United Healthcare." I'm sure it was just an honest mistake. So we call United Healthcare, and it was the representative on the phone at United Healthcare who said to me, "Dr. Mabry, I am so sorry. Your employment with Devry was terminated at 12:01 a.m. and you no longer have health insurance."
Oh my God, what a way to find out.
I didn't even get a tweet. Not even a tweet. They could have tweeted. I mean, everybody else gets fired in a tweet. Why couldn't I get fired in a tweet?
Do they?
Just saying.
Is that what's happening these days? Because I don't know. Are people getting fired with tweets?
People get fired with tweets now. It's the equivalent of texting someone to break up with them.
Oh my goodness.
Well,
you were ghosted. You were ghosted.
I was ghosted.
You were ghosted. Suddenly they were gone.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's the phrase that you use to describe when that happens.
Yeah. I remember just kind of being in awe when the representative said that to me. And the first thing I did, of course, was I sent an email to my manager and I said, "Wow." I said, "So this is what we've evolved to." I said, "You can always tell the quality of a person by how they handle a breakup." And, and I just kind of left it at that.
Right.
Because for me, there was nothing else to say because I know who you are now.
But you were able to rather quickly pick yourself up. I mean, you're incredibly resilient and you have incredible grit. And perhaps you had no choice, but you picked yourself up and you were able to move on with your life and do something really creative that I think is an amazing expression of your passion and your purpose and something that makes you feel like you're bringing your whole self to what it is that you do. And I mean, that's my impression. Correct me if I'm wrong. Am I right?
No, you are absolutely right. And it's like I tell everybody, every single job that I've had prepared me for what I do now. And what I do now is I started my own nonprofit foundation and I help parents homeschool their children. I work mostly with at-risk students or students who have dropped out or aged out of high school to get a high school diploma. And I've done this for 83 families, and it is the most rewarding thing I've ever done.
I love that. 83 families.
Yes.
That's fantastic. And I know from talking to you informally, not on camera, not on Facebook, that you really, really love your work.
I do. And, and that's the funny thing because when I was in higher education, I was good at what I did. I knew how to keep our student retention rates up. I had some of the lowest student attrition rates in the whole university system because I realized that a lot of times when students drop out, they're not dropping out because they can't make it academically. It's all of the other, I call them all of the other flying insects that get in the way. So I got really good at being able to see the flying insect. And I think that is what has really made me successful in what I do with the homeschool families and helping the parents. It's really hearing the students and what they don't say, because what they don't say is so much more powerful than what they do say.
Well, it sounds like you have a really great gift for doing this work.
This is my passion. And I think that you have to know what your passion is, because so many times people get stuck in the profession. And when you're stuck in the profession, it becomes, I've got to do this because I've got to pay this bill, or this job is what provides my insurance, or this job provides something. So anytime you're in a need-based relationship, that need is always going to change. And needs are seldom connected to your passion. You don't ever say, oh, I'm so passionate about needing this job. Nobody ever says that. Says no one ever. It's about finding that passion that's not connected to something that you need.
Right. And then if you can find a way to make money doing that, I mean, that's what everybody, I think, fantasizes about, being able to do that, right?
Yes.
And you were able to do that.
I was. And the funny thing is, I didn't start out to make money. I started out to make a difference. And you know how people always say, do what you love and the money will follow? And I'm going to challenge that a little bit and say, find your passion and your purpose will follow, and then the money will follow.
I like that. That's great.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Well, what I find challenging about transitions is that sometimes they're long and slow and painful. And you're very lucky because yours was quick. How long of a lag time was there between like having this huge surprise that you had no health benefits and no job to starting this business that you now love? That's a true reflection of your passion and your purpose.
I joke, it took me 9 months to get my IRS 501c3 status, and it takes you 9 months to have a baby. So I gave birth to my new life.
Wow. So in 9 months, you were able to get it up and running.
Yes.
Okay. Got it. Excellent. So then my questions then are, what advice would you give to people who find themselves still in the old way of working, who have dreams for their future, but maybe they haven't had that traumatic event that's going to send them into whatever the next phase is? Like, what are what kind of advice would you give to them?
I think 3 things. One, of course, is know your passion. I keep saying that over and over and over. Know your passion, know your passion, know your passion. And the reason I say that is because if you know your passion, when trauma hits or when that unexpected moment occurs, you'll know where your center is. Your passion is your center. And when you know where your center is, you know where to go. In knowing your center and knowing where to go, find the ability to speak your truth. Before all of this happened, I lived as a shadow person. And a shadow person meaning I was one person in the professional arena and I was another person socially. And it wasn't until I was towards the end of my tenure as the Dean of Graduate Studies that I actually came out of the closet as an African American lesbian. And, I remember when I did that, and I did it because I got tired of hiding. I got tired of making sure that I was using a non-gendered pronoun and making sure that, okay, well, I've got somebody to go with me to this company event as a cover because I was divorced from my husband. When people had started to talk, and I always tell my students, when it comes to telling your story, take the paintbrush, control the canvas, control the spin, tell your story before somebody else does, and that way you remain in control of it. If you allow someone else to tell your story, you give up control. Never give them control.
Wow. I mean, you just shared incredibly personal information about yourself, and that takes so much courage to do. I feel a lot of gratitude that you felt comfortable enough to do that here. And I'm very humbled by that. And I want you to know I really appreciate that.
Well, because and I think that's not my number 3 thing, but I think that goes to a part of speaking your truth. You have to be willing to be vulnerable. And, and as women, we are often taught, don't show your vulnerability. People will take advantage of you. So we walk around with these false exteriors on us because we don't want to be vulnerable. And in doing that, we never speak our truth. So, if you're going to speak your truth, you've got to be willing to be vulnerable in it.
It's very difficult to do. There's a lot of people that wouldn't do what you and I are doing right now, which is to have a conversation like this publicly for the world to see in the first place, because they feel so exposed and it makes them feel very vulnerable. And I feel vulnerable whenever I take a risk. If it's a really good risk, especially if it's one I should take, I feel especially vulnerable. That's sort of my indicator or barometer of whether I'm doing the right thing or not. Something I want to do, but it really opens you up and it kind of frightens you. It's usually the thing you need to do, the thing you should do, right?
Yes.
But you are really a living, breathing, walking, talking example of living your truth and being vulnerable. It's beautiful.
And it's so liberating. Oh my gosh, Jennifer, this is like the freest I have ever been, other than when I was driving the 101 from San Diego to San Francisco, living in my truth in the South. Right. I mean, I'm doing this in the South of all places. It's liberating.
Yes. I mean, on the one hand, it shows you how far we have come and we are coming, that you can even live in Georgia the way you're living so openly. It's amazing.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I've always been an activist. And I remember marching down Peachtree Street in 1992 in the Gay Pride Parade. And the protesters outnumbered the marchers, and they were throwing bottles and rocks and food at us. And I remember the members of one of the Jewish congregations, they were marching with us, and the parents took their bodies, and we were marching in a straight line, and the parents took their bodies and they turned their bodies as a shield so that the rocks and everything hit them instead of us. And we kept marching.
Oh my goodness. How old were you when you were doing this?
I was 18.
Wow.
When you grow up in an environment like that and you're surrounded with people who are willing to be your human shield, then you grow up in a freedom and you understand the value of speaking your truth. But what happened to me is what happens to so many people when we enter the professional world. And it's not anything that anybody says to you about not speaking your truth and not being vulnerable, but it's the little things. If you're a woman, you can't show any emotion when you get upset, or you're labeled as, oh, well, it's just that time of the month for her, or she's just overly emotional. And heaven forbid you're a Black woman that shows emotion, then you're labeled as an angry Black woman. But on the other hand, if a man shows emotion, it's, well, he speaks up and he stands up for things, for injustice. And he's a good stand-up man. He's a good salt of the earth man. Mm-hmm. But a woman is emotional and irrational.
And hysterical.
And hysterical, yes.
Yeah, I hate that word. Really do. Yeah, it's crazy. Oh, hi, Nick Rishwain is tuning in. Good to see you, Nick. Thank you. Thanks so much for being here. Yeah, the double standards, I think there's that now that the awareness has been raised, that they may be starting to dissipate. I really do feel like we're living in a very exciting time.
I think that if I could say anything about the time that we're living in right now, because on November 16th, 2016, I was not excited about the time that we were living in. Mm-mm. And now there are still things that make the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. We just had a KKK march in my hometown. And I was so proud of how everyone in my hometown, though, came out and stood up and said, we choose love. And I want to say that we're changing, but my fear is that people are becoming more vocal, that, they're hearing us, but are they really hearing us? Are they really hearing us, or is this a passing fad of them hearing us? So that's my only concern.
You had a podcast not long ago where you would get 300,000 downloads an episode. Can you tell us a little bit about that podcast?
That was the Back to Us radio network, and it actually started as a joke between me and my best friend, Dr. Sharon Smith, who's now Dr. Sharon Shakespeare. And she had just lost her first wife to breast cancer. My daughter had just been diagnosed as having schizoaffective disorder, and the public school system had failed us miserably. And I was like, I got to get all of this out. I had to get all of that rage inside of me out. And so what I did was, when Sharon agreed to do this podcast with me, I went through every platform that I could find. I went through Blog Talk and Libsyn and Blurberry and a couple of more. And so I bought annual airtime packages, not realizing that when you're just planning on doing one podcast twice a month, you don't need all that airtime. You don't need all that storage space. But I had it, and of course, they're not going to give me my money back. So I turned to the community, and I did the only thing that I knew how to do. I said, hey, I got this. If you need it, it's here. And oh my gosh, they came. And so then I had a goal to give airtime to every single letter of LGBTQIA. And we did. I had 13 hosts who broadcast 7 days a week. And we were picked up by Voice Republic and syndicated. And it was an incredible journey. I got to meet a family out of Texas and help them push Carrie's Law, which now says that you no longer have to dial 911 at hotels. You can directly dial 911. So I got to champion that because I was the first person to interview the family on air, because of course the news outlets were covering that this young woman had been murdered by her estranged husband, but no one was covering her father's fight to change the 911 system. And so I partnered with the family, and we pushed it all the way up to President Trump's desk. It took us 3 years, but he just signed it into law last month.
Congratulations. It's a huge accomplishment. Huge.
Yeah.
I love how you put your energy towards these types of causes and how generous you are. And I mean, everything you do is about serving and helping other people. It's so inspiring.
Well, I think that, and that's what really recharges me, because honestly, I mean, Jennifer, the truth is I've got a disease that I'm going to die from. And finding the strength in every day is what keeps me going, because I know that if it's not me, then who? Who is going to help people homeschool? Who is going to give them a voice? Because it's like, if you don't have a certain title in front of your name, you don't get recognized. And that's what I tell people all the time. I said, the doctor in front of my name is just to get me in the door so that I can fight for you.
That's beautiful. Well, it's incredibly moving. You're a very deep person. And I want to cover one more point about that my listeners can sort of grab onto, that will help them in dealing with their own personal crises, their illnesses, their job losses, because most of us, you go through a transition or a crisis like that, and you have to keep working. You have a kid that's having some problems and needs to be homeschooled. And yes, you got to do that. And you have to keep working. But I'd like people to have more joy in the work that they're doing. And there's something that you mentioned to me during one of our conversations that I'd like you to talk about here, which was how you think that if you were to give a lesson to someone who's trying so hard to transition to a happier situation, to being happier with their job, that you would tell them that they need to be okay with imperfection? I know I didn't say it as artfully as you, but the whole concept is about embracing imperfection and starting and doing it anyway. Did I get that right?
You did. I mean, it's finding peace in the imperfection, because so many times when people are going through transition, or they're thinking about writing a book, or they're thinking about making that career change, they want to wait until the perfect moment. I would write that book, but I'm not ready to write it yet. I've got to wait for the perfect moment. I would change careers, but I've got to wait for the perfect moment. Well, while you're waiting for that perfect moment, all of those imperfect moments are passing you by. And, the imperfect moments are the ones, that's the beauty of the journey. You have to find the peace in the imperfection. And stop waiting for that perfect moment. Stop waiting for the perfect guest to arrive before you break out the china in the china cabinet. Every day is the perfect guest day to eat on china. We eat on china in my house all the time.
Yeah, I know. We got to enjoy. Like, I used to buy different clothes for different things, and I had the really good clothes and I wouldn't wear them. It's crazy because they were so good. Like, that it's the same mentality. You can't use the china because it's not a special occasion. Well, I think your perspective is much better, which is every day is a special occasion.
Every day is a special occasion. And it's like, I tell my students all the time, the only thing that's standing in between you and the life that you want to dream is fear. Everything that you want, everything is just on the other side of fear. You just got to go through the door to get there. And fear is really false evidence appearing real.
Fear is something that our reptilian brains make us feel in order to protect us and keep us safe.
Yeah, but it's like, to keep us safe from what and protect us from what? It's like I tell my students all the time, because we're going through the college application process right now. And I have some students who are so paralyzed that they're going to get rejected from the college, which they're not, because, I have strategically picked colleges that I know that they will get accepted into, but they don't know that. They are so paralyzed with fear that they don't want to apply. And I'm like, okay, well, if you don't apply, you're rejected anyway. So let's apply and see what happens.
Yeah. I've been really public about my struggle with perfectionism. Like, on my podcast, I have at least 2 episodes where I'm talking about my issues with perfectionism. But I have to say, with all the work I've done on perfectionism and all the things I do despite my fear and this perfectionistic tendency that I have, I still suffer from perfectionism. It's an ongoing struggle for me to adopt the attitude of done is better than perfect, or there's no failure, only feedback. I mean, these are the mantras that I run through my head all the time. And it's a challenge. It's a challenge.
I think a lot of your desire for perfection comes from your career, because in your career, there is zero room for error, but that's your career. That's not who you are, baby. Your career says, I've got to be on the top of my game. I've got to be perfect. I've got to bring it every time I show up. But the real you is, it's okay not to bring it every time you show up. Sometimes it's okay just to show up, but you have to separate the career you from the you. And I think all of yours have like kind of merged and melted together like a big old pot of butter.
Butter and something else.
Butter and Rice Krispies, like a big old Rice Krispie treat.
That would be a good thing.
Yeah, because it is a good thing, but you are so much more powerful than you ever realize. And I tell you this all the time.
You're amazing. You're just like such an inspiration. Whenever I'm having a bad day, you're on speed dial. I'm just going to text you. I'm going to message you. I'm going to find you. I'm going to track you down on every platform, and you're going to like make me feel better.
Yeah, because I was you. And, that's because it's kind of like looking in the mirror of me and I see you and I'm like, I just want to, how people say, if you could say to your 15-year-old self, what would you say? And, when I see you and everything that you're trying to do right now, you are that 34-year-old me. And it's like, I just want to come and break the glass and save you. It's like, so Jennifer, sweet. If you need help, blink twice.
Oh, I will be like calling you, sending you videos of me going like this. Trust me. You asked for it.
Yeah, that's going to be our code word. Blink twice.
Seriously, you are hysterical. You're so lovely. You're so sweet. I mean, what other wisdom can you please impart my listeners? Because I know so many of them. I know everybody I know struggles with this. There isn't anyone who is immune. It's really a human phenomenon. What else can you grace us with, having gone through and arrived at the other side, which you clearly have? Smoother. Your transition was smoother. I'm sure it didn't feel like it at the time, but smoother than like most that I know, and certainly smoother than any of mine. What else can you please leave my listeners with?
I think the biggest thing is find joy. Find joy. Joy is not this abstract concept. Joy is the waking up and smelling the coffee in the morning. Joy is watching a sunrise. Joy is having that friend that you can call and say, if you need help, blink twice, and laugh. Oh my God, laugh at everything, laugh at anything. Find someone in the store. And I know y'all don't do this out west, but just say, what, how is your day going? And wait long enough to hear the answer.
Okay, we do this out west. You were just trying to get me. I know it. I know you were trying to get me with that comment. We definitely do that. I do that. I connect all the time. Sometimes my husband gets a little impatient with me because we'll go out, we'll run an errand, or we'll go to a store to go buy something. And I'm talking to the people there. I can't help myself. Like everybody I meet, it's an opportunity for me to connect with pretty much.
Yes.
And so I ask those questions and I listen to the answers, and I love that. I love it when I'm not in my office, and this is the thing that used to frustrate me the most when I was first a lawyer, was that they locked me in a library with no windows, no air. It was floor to ceiling books. They expected me to stay in there 14 hours a day or else I wasn't going to really be a lawyer, right? And they wanted me to like read and research things. And then when I'd come out, they'd harass me. But when I was in the library, I was relatively safe, reading these legal briefs and cases and writing briefs and all of that. And I knew that there was no way that I could really be a lawyer if I had no touch with the world, like no life experience and no contact with anybody. It was like being in a jail. It really, really was. That's how it felt. That's why I went into practice on my own. It was, I can't do this. This isn't going to work. This is horrible. This is, I sold my soul to the devil. It couldn't have been what they had in mind for me when I spent all that money on that expensive law school education and worked super hard and passed the bar. And now I'm a lawyer. It's like, oh boy, I'm like imprisoned in a library with no windows. And I just knew that I had to have connection with people. But that's always been what drives me and motivates me. It's people. I care about people. I love people. I want to connect with people. I learn from people. I get happiness from people,
Yes.
So, yeah. So, I mean, that's how I get joy. So,
yeah. And again, sometimes when you find the joy, then you will figure out your passion too.
Yes. And then there's some of us who have so many passions, we don't even know where to start. Like, how do we get to all of our passions?
How do you harness?
Right?
How do you drill down?
Exactly. How do you drill down? Do you have any recommendations?
Well, a lot of times you got to find the core. You might have a lot of passions, but there's only one core. So you have to figure out which one is your core. Which one is the one that if everything else went away that you would still hold on to.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, for me, it would be connecting with people. It would be asking questions of people like you. I mean, I love this job. I gave myself this job. It doesn't pay very well, but I'm really happy that I'm so committed to this job because I get to meet you and other amazing people and find out how you tick and learn from your experiences and then take all that good stuff and pass it on to other people and hopefully help them on their journey. That really makes me happy. I mean, just makes me ecstatically happy.
Yeah, and that's it.
That is it.
You found your passion. You found your core.
One of them. Yes, definitely. Yes. I found one of them. Absolutely. Well, you have been, you're just a big joy to me to know. And I'm so happy that we met. And I'm so grateful that you were here because your story is inspiring and you have so much wisdom to share. And I just want to say thank you.
Well, I love our friendship because, it's like I tell people all the time. I have friends that, they're like, oh my God, I need this. I'm like, okay, I don't want to be needed. I want to be wanted. With you, it's kind of like going over to that girlfriend's house and you just plop down on the sofa and you're like, oh my gosh, let me tell you about my day. And, and she looks over at you and she's like, no, let me tell you about my day. Mm. And, that's kind of the relationship that I have with you. And I love it. I love it too.
And we can both come on Facebook Live and do our lives with bad hair days. I mean, it's like, and still feel comfortable. Like, I know you got me. You're on the other side of this. It's going to be fine.
Yeah. And that's what I told you. I was like, look, we both got bad hair today because it's rained for the past 2 days in Georgia. The humidity is out of control here. So it's like the only thing I can do is just brush my hair back and call it a day.
Well, any day you want to brush your hair back, call it a day and jump on a Facebook Live with me, I would be happy to do that with you. Well, before we sign off, if you have any special links or places where people can follow you, can you please tell us right now and then I'll drop them in the show notes?
Okay. So if you are thinking about homeschooling your child, we have a private Facebook group called TIERS. That's TIERS, Free Academy. And you can come in there and that's where all of the parents and the students too, where we hang out. You can also find me on dranisemabry.com. Now that website is going through some serious rebranding right now. So it should emerge from the fire in another month or so. And, and of course I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram.
How can we find you on Instagram?
Instagram is Dr. Annise Mabry.
Okay.
And I think the students also set up a TIERS Free Academy Instagram page. The students manage my social media. I think they also have Pinterest. And that's both Dr. Annise Mabry and TIERS Free Academy. And then I've got my book that is coming out at the end of June called Educational Disobedience. One Mom's Homeschool Journey That Changed a Community.
It's a beautiful title. I'm going to be seeking copywriting advice from you soon.
Yay! And you're going to write your own book.
At some point in time, yes. First, I'm going to finish a few other projects, and then maybe I'll think about writing my book. But I know you're going to keep me busy no matter what.
I know, right?
All right, you are. You are. Well, thank you again so much. I'm really grateful.
Well, I have had a blast, Jennifer. I will talk to you soon. Have an awesome evening.
Again, let me just say that it's truly an honor when I speak to somebody and they are so vulnerable, so raw, so authentic with me during the conversation. I mean, that to me is the highest compliment that anybody can pay me. And I just feel very fortunate to have had that conversation with Doc. So the topics that were, I think, really, really stellar involve transitions and perfectionism and waiting for the perfect moment before taking the leap and being vulnerable and being resilient and finding your passion and finding your purpose. And it's about mostly picking yourself up and moving on with your life, even when you think that is impossible. So I want to thank Doc Mabry again for being so bold and so generous with herself on the interview. And I want to say goodbye to you all. And thank you again for listening. If you ever want to communicate with me directly or find more information about my courses and how I work with people, whether as a lawyer or whether as a business consultant, you can email me at romehowell@gmail.com. Also, send me an email if you'd like to get my free guide to 7 strategies to getting over your fear of live streaming, which I wrote in order to inspire people to have the confidence to show up in live video, because that is such an important thing for your business. More on that at a later date. Thanks again for listening, and I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye. Rome Howell is produced in Los Angeles, California, with production support and editing services by Andrea Klunder and Edwin Ruiz at the Creative Imposter Studios in Chicago. I'm Jennifer Gardner. Let's stay connected at Rome Howell on Facebook, at Jen B. Gardner on Twitter, and at Jen B. Gardner 22 on Instagram. Thanks again for listening, and take care.